There, Jennifer said. Is there anything else you need me to do? Actually, yes. There's one more thing. I stood up from the couch, steadier on my feet than I had been earlier, and walked to the front window. Jennifer's car was parked in our driveway, a white BMW SUV with personalized plates that read, Blessed One. Jennifer, I want you to leave now. And I want you to understand that this conversation doesn't end here. What do you mean? I mean that posting a correction on Facebook doesn't undo the damage you've caused to my business, my reputation, and my peace of mind. It doesn't change the fact that you violated our privacy and stole our property. It doesn't make up for the fact that you spent 3 days acting like I was dead while I was fighting for my life. Jennifer's face was getting red. I was trying to help David. I was trying to be supportive during a crisis. No, Jennifer. You were trying to insert yourself into the center of someone else's tragedy. You were trying to play the role of the grieving sister-in-law who steps up to handle everything when the family is devastated by loss. I moved closer to her, my voice getting stronger with my anger. But here's the problem with your performance. I didn't die. I'm standing right here, very much alive, and I can tell you exactly how I feel about what you did. And how do you feel? Furious, violated, betrayed, and determined to make sure you understand that your actions have consequences. Jennifer looked at David. Are you going to let her talk to me this way? David was quiet for a long moment. Jennifer, what you did was wrong. Rachel has every right to be angry. But I was trying to help. You were trying to help yourself to our belongings and our personal business, I interrupted. You were trying to position yourself as the hero of a tragedy that hadn't actually happened. Jennifer grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Fine. I can see I'm not welcome here. I was just trying to be a good sister-in-law, but apparently that's not appreciated. Jennifer, I called as she reached the door. One more thing. She turned back, her face a mask of hurt feelings and wounded pride. Stay away from our house, stay out of our business, and if I ever find out that you shared personal information about our family, our finances, or our medical issues with anyone, you'll discover that there are legal consequences for that kind of violation. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. There's a big difference. After Jennifer left, David and I sat in our living room in uncomfortable silence. I could tell he was processing everything that had happened, trying to reconcile the sister he thought he knew with the woman who had systematically invaded our lives while I was unconscious. Rachel, he said finally, I owe you an apology. For what? For not seeing what Jennifer was really doing. For defending her actions. For giving her access to our house and our lives when she clearly couldn't be trusted with that access. I reached over and took his hand. David, you were in crisis mode. You had just watched your wife collapse and get rushed into emergency brain surgery. You weren't thinking clearly because you couldn't think clearly. But I should have protected you better. I should have questioned what she was doing instead of just being grateful that someone was offering to help. Maybe. But what matters now is how we handle this going forward. What do you want to do? I was quiet for a moment, thinking about the jewelry Jennifer had stolen, the files she had gone through, the business relationships she had damaged with her premature obituary. I want to make sure she understands that her actions have consequences, I said finally. And I want to make sure she never has the opportunity to do something like this again. What does that mean? It means I'm going to document everything she did while I was unconscious. I'm going to contact everyone who saw her original death announcement and make sure they know the truth. And if she ever violates our privacy or our property again, I'm going to pursue legal action. David nodded slowly. And what about family relationships? Jennifer is my sister. Jennifer is the woman who stole my jewelry, went through our financial records, and announced my death while I was fighting for my life. The fact that she's your sister doesn't give her special permission to violate our lives." I squeezed his hand. "David, I nearly died 5 days ago. When something like that happens, it changes your perspective on what's important and what's acceptable. I'm not going to waste whatever time I have left tolerating people who treat me badly. Even if those people are family. Especially if those people are family. Family relationships should be based on love, respect, and trust. Jennifer has demonstrated that she doesn't have any of those things when it comes to me." That night, as I lay in bed next to David, I thought about the strange experience of coming back from the dead. Not literally, of course. I had never actually died. But from the perspective of social media, from the viewpoint of people who had seen Jennifer's announcement, I had been dead for 3 days before being resurrected by her reluctant correction. It was a surreal experience, knowing that there were people in the world who had grieved for me, who had shared memories of me, who had moved on from my death only to discover that it had never actually happened. But it was also illuminating. Jennifer's actions while I was unconscious had revealed exactly who she was when she thought no one was watching, when she thought I would never be able to confront her about her choices. She was someone who jumped to conclusions and acted on them without verification. She was someone who inserted herself into other people's tragedies and tried to make herself the hero of their stories. She was someone who had no respect for privacy, boundaries, or other people's property. Most importantly, she was someone who had been hoping for my death. I didn't have proof of that last point. Jennifer would deny it if confronted, and David would never believe it without evidence. But I knew it was true. Everything about her behavior while I was unconscious suggested that she was preparing for, and perhaps even anticipating my death, rather than hoping for my recovery. The Facebook post had been just the beginning. The funeral planning, the jewelry theft, the invasion of our house, the review of our financial records, all of it pointed to someone who was positioning herself to benefit from my death and David's grief. I fell asleep that night with a growing sense of determination. Jennifer thought she had been dealing with a dead woman who couldn't fight back. Now she was going to discover what it was like to deal with a very much alive woman who had no intention of forgetting what had been done to her. Chapter 3: The Reckoning. Over the next few days, as I continued to recover from surgery, I began to understand the full scope of damage Jennifer's premature obituary had caused. My phone rang constantly with calls from confused friends, concerned clients, and business associates who had heard conflicting reports about my death and recovery. "Rachel, thank God you're alive," said Maria Santos, a fellow marketing consultant I'd known for years. "I saw Jennifer's post and was absolutely devastated. Then I heard you were in the hospital. Then I heard you were recovering. I had no idea what to believe." "I'm alive and recovering well," I assured her. "Jennifer made a mistake and posted incorrect information." "A mistake? Rachel, she wrote a whole obituary. She talked about funeral arrangements and how peaceful you looked. That's not a mistake. That's a completely fabricated story." Maria was right, and she wasn't the only person who noticed that Jennifer's post had gone far beyond a simple misunderstanding about my medical condition. My business partner, Steve Kim, called with more concerning news. "Rachel, I've been fielding calls all week from your clients. Some of them are sticking with us because they know you're going to recover, but others have already signed with competing firms. They said they couldn't afford to wait and see whether you were actually going to be able to continue working." "How many clients have we lost?" "4 so far. That's about 30% of your accounts." I felt sick. My business had taken me 5 years to build, and Jennifer's 3-day death announcement had damaged it in ways that might take months or years to repair. "Steve, can you help me put together a professional statement explaining what happened? Something I can send to industry contacts and potential clients?" Of course. But Rachel, you might also want to consider legal action. What Jennifer did wasn't just personally hurtful, it was professionally damaging in ways that could affect your livelihood for years. That afternoon, I called Rebecca Martinez, a lawyer who specialized in defamation and business damages. Ms. Morrison, she said after I explained the situation, what you're describing could potentially constitute defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and possibly invasion of privacy depending on what personal information Jennifer accessed while she was in your home. What would I need to prove to have a case? For defamation, we'd need to show that Jennifer made false statements about you, which she clearly did, and that those statements caused damage to your reputation and business. For the emotional distress claim, we'd need to document the extreme and outrageous nature of her conduct and the harm it caused you. And for invasion of privacy? That would depend on exactly what she did in your home and what personal information she accessed without permission. Going through your financial records, taking your jewelry, rearranging your belongings, all of that could support a privacy claim. Rebecca paused. The challenge is that Jennifer will claim she was trying to help during a family crisis. We'd need to demonstrate that her actions went far beyond what any reasonable person would consider helpful. I think I can demonstrate that. Good, because frankly, Ms. Morrison, what you've described is some of the most outrageous behavior I've encountered in a family situation. Announcing someone's death while they're fighting for their life, then systematically going through their belongings and planning their funeral, that's not normal family support behavior. I made an appointment to meet with Rebecca the following week to discuss the possibility of legal action. But first, I wanted to confront Jennifer one more time and give her an opportunity to make things right without involving lawyers. I spent the weekend documenting everything Jennifer had done while I was unconscious. I made lists of the missing jewelry, photographed the disorganized files in our office, and wrote down every detail I could remember about the Facebook posts and her behavior at the hospital. I also did some research into Jennifer's social media activity during the 3 days I was unconscious. What I found was disturbing. In addition to the death announcement, Jennifer had posted several updates about supporting David during this tragic time. She had shared photos of food she was bringing to help the grieving family. She had posted inspirational quotes about loss and healing. She had even shared a memory about a conversation she claimed to have had with me about what I would want at my funeral. Most telling of all, she had changed her Facebook profile picture to a black and white photo with the caption, "In loving memory of my sister-in-law, Rachel Morrison, 1983 to 2024. She had created an entire narrative around my death and her role as a supportive family member who was helping everyone cope with the tragedy. The problem was that the tragedy was entirely fictional. On Monday morning, I drove to Jennifer's house. I felt strong enough to drive short distances, and I wanted to have this conversation on her turf, where she would be comfortable and unguarded. The Hayes family lived in one of those suburban developments where every house looked similar, but cost more than most people could afford. Jennifer's house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, with a perfectly manicured lawn and a 3-car garage that currently held her BMW, Paul's truck, and a boat they used maybe twice a year. I parked in their driveway and walked to the front door. Through the large windows, I could see Jennifer in her kitchen, wearing yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, sipping coffee while scrolling through her phone. I rang the doorbell and waited. When Jennifer opened the door, her expression went through several rapid changes: surprise, discomfort, and then a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Rachel, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be home resting?" "I needed to talk to you. May I come in?" Jennifer hesitated, then stepped back to let me enter. "Of course. Would you like some coffee?" "No, thank you. This won't take long." We sat in her living room, which was decorated in shades of beige and cream with carefully arranged accessories that looked like they'd never been moved. Everything about the room suggested money and taste, but no actual personality. "Jennifer, I've been thinking about our conversation on Saturday night, and I've realized that there are some things we didn't discuss." "What things?" I pulled out my phone and showed her screenshots of her social media posts from the week I was in the hospital. "These things. The multiple posts about supporting David during his tragic loss, the inspirational quotes about grief and healing, the profile picture memorial, the story about me supposedly telling you what I wanted at my funeral." Jennifer's face went pale as she looked at the screenshots. "I was just trying to help people process what was happening." "What was happening was that I was recovering from surgery. What you were posting about was a fictional death that existed only in your imagination. I made a mistake with the first post, but the other posts were just, I was trying to help David's friends and family understand the situation. By creating an elaborate fantasy about my death and your role in helping everyone cope with it." I swiped to another screenshot. "Jennifer, this post talks about a conversation you claim we had about funeral music. When exactly did this conversation take place?" I don't remember exactly. Maybe last Christmas?" "We've never had a conversation about funeral music. We've barely had conversations about anything personal. You made up this entire story to make yourself look like someone who was close to me and understood my wishes." Jennifer was squirming in her chair now, unable to maintain eye contact. "People were asking questions about what you would have wanted. I was just trying to provide comfort. You were trying to position yourself as the grieving family member who had special insight into my wishes and my relationship with David. You were performing grief for social media points." I put my phone away and leaned forward. "Jennifer, I want you to understand something. What you did while I was unconscious wasn't just a mistake or an overreaction. It was a systematic attempt to insert yourself into the center of a tragedy and to benefit from what you hoped would be my death." "That's not true, isn't it? You announced my death without confirmation. You planned my funeral without permission. You stole my jewelry and went through my financial records. You created an entire social media narrative about your role as the supportive sister-in-law helping David through his loss." I stood up and walked to the large windows overlooking their backyard. "The only problem with your performance was that I didn't cooperate by actually dying." "Rachel, you're making this sound much more calculated than it was. I was just trying to help during a crisis." I turned back to face her. "Were you helping when you took my grandmother's pearls to your house? Were you helping when you went through our bank statements and insurance policies? Were you helping when you selected my funeral outfit and took photos of it?" I was preparing for the worst-case scenario. "No, Jennifer. You were preparing for what you hoped would be the final scenario. And now that I've survived to see what you did, you're going to face the consequences." "What consequences?" I pulled a business card from my purse and set it on her coffee table. "That's the card for the lawyer I'll be hiring to pursue legal action against you for defamation, invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." Jennifer picked up the card with shaking hands. "You're suing me?" "That depends on you. I'm giving you one chance to make this right without involving lawyers." "What do you want me to do?" I sat back down and looked directly at her. "First, I want you to post a detailed public apology on social media explaining exactly what you did wrong and acknowledging the damage you caused to my business and reputation." "Okay, I can do that." "Second, I want you to contact every person who shared your original death announcement and personally explain that you were wrong and that your posts damaged my professional relationships." Jennifer's face fell. "Rachel, that's dozens of people, maybe hundreds." "Then you'd better get started. You created this mess by spreading false information. Now you need to clean it up by spreading correct information. What else? Third, I want you to pay for the business I lost because of your posts. My accountant estimates that I've lost about $30,000 in revenue from clients who terminated their contracts after thinking I was dead. $30,000? Rachel, I don't have that kind of money just lying around. Then you'll need to figure out how to get it. Maybe you can sell some of the jewelry you stole from my house. I didn't steal your jewelry. I was protecting it. You took my property without permission and moved it to your house. That's theft, Jennifer. The fact that you plan to return it after my funeral doesn't change what you did. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a sense of control I hadn't experienced since waking up in the hospital. And fourth, I want you to stay completely out of my life and David's life going forward. No more unsolicited visits, no more helpful suggestions, no more involvement in our personal business. You're asking me to cut ties with my own brother? I'm asking you to respect boundaries that you've already proven you can't be trusted to respect voluntarily. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, staring at the lawyer's business card. And if I do all of this, you won't sue me? If you do all of this promptly and completely, I'll consider the matter resolved. But if you fail to follow through on any part of it, or if you ever violate our privacy or property again, I'll pursue every legal remedy available to me. How long do I have? 2 weeks for the social media corrections and personal contacts. 1 month to pay the money for my lost business. The boundary respecting starts immediately. I stood up to leave. Jennifer, I want you to understand something. I nearly died last week. When you come that close to losing everything, it changes your perspective on what you're willing to tolerate from people who treat you badly. I wasn't treating you badly. I was trying to help. You were treating me like I was already dead while I was fighting for my life. That's not help, Jennifer. That's predatory behavior. I walked toward the front door, then turned back for one final comment. Oh, and Jennifer? Next time you want to announce someone's death on social media, you might want to make sure they're actually dead first. It's embarrassing when your obituary subject shows up to read their own reviews. As I drove home from Jennifer's house, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before my surgery. Complete clarity about who I was and what I would and wouldn't accept from other people. My brush with death had been terrifying, but it had also been educational. It had shown me exactly who could be trusted during a crisis and who would use someone else's tragedy as an opportunity for their own drama and benefit. Jennifer had revealed herself to be someone who couldn't be trusted with access to my life, my property, or my family's personal information. She had shown that she was willing to lie, steal, and manipulate social media for her own purposes. Now she was going to learn that there were consequences for that kind of behavior. But more importantly, I was going to make sure that everyone who had seen her death announcement knew the truth. I was very much alive. I was fully aware of what she had done while I was unconscious, and I was not the kind of person who would let such violations go unanswered. Sometimes the best way to respond to someone's premature obituary is to deliver the correction in person. And sometimes the most powerful thing a supposedly dead person can do is show up at the front door of the person who killed them off. I was about to find out exactly how powerful that could be. Chapter 4: Rising from the Ashes. 2 weeks after my confrontation with Jennifer at her house, I was sitting in my home office reviewing the documentation of her compliance with my demands. It had been an interesting fortnight, watching someone who had been so eager to announce my death now scrambling to publicly acknowledge that she had been wrong. Jennifer's detailed apology post on Facebook had received over 300 comments, most of them expressing shock at her original mistake and sympathy for the confusion she had caused. The post read, I need to make a full and complete apology for serious errors I made regarding my sister-in-law, Rachel Morrison. 2 weeks ago, when Rachel was having emergency brain surgery, I posted that she had died. This was completely wrong. I posted this information without verification and without consulting with Rachel's doctors or family members. My false announcement caused significant damage to Rachel's business relationships, professional reputation, and personal well-being. Several of Rachel's clients terminated their contracts because they believed she had died. Friends and colleagues were caused unnecessary grief and confusion. I also engaged in other inappropriate behavior while Rachel was unconscious, including going through her personal belongings and financial records without permission. This was a serious violation of her privacy and trust. Rachel is alive, healthy, and fully recovered from her surgery. She is back to work and managing her business successfully. I deeply regret the harm my actions caused, and I take full responsibility for the damage that resulted from my false announcement. I am working to personally contact everyone who shared my original post to make sure they know the truth. I am also making financial restitution for the business losses Rachel suffered as a result of my false announcement. There is no excuse for what I did. I violated Rachel's privacy, damaged her reputation, and caused unnecessary pain to her family and friends. I am deeply sorry and am committed to making this right. #apology. #I was wrong. #Rachel is alive. The post had been shared 127 times and had generated significant discussion about the responsibility of social media users to verify information before posting it. Several people had commented that Jennifer's behavior went far beyond a simple mistake and raised questions about her judgment and character. More importantly, Jennifer had followed through on contacting people individually. I had been receiving calls and messages all week from friends, colleagues, and business contacts who said Jennifer had personally called or messaged them to explain her error and clarify that I was alive and well. "Rachel, I got the strangest call from Jennifer yesterday," said my friend Amy Chen. "She called to apologize for posting that you had died and to make sure I knew you were okay. But the weird thing was, she seemed more concerned about covering herself legally than about the fact that she had caused so much pain and confusion." Amy was right. Jennifer's individual contacts had been dutiful but clearly reluctant. She was going through the motions of my demands because she was afraid of legal consequences, not because she genuinely understood the harm she had caused. But she was doing it, which was what mattered for my purposes. The financial restitution was taking longer. Jennifer had asked for a payment plan to cover the $30,000 I had demanded, claiming that she and Paul didn't have that much cash available immediately. I had agreed to monthly payments of $5,000 over 6 months, with the understanding that failure to make any payment on schedule would result in immediate legal action. The first payment had arrived on time, delivered to my house in an envelope with no note or explanation. Just a cashier's check for $5,000, which felt appropriate given the impersonal nature of our entire interaction. But the most satisfying development had been the response from my business network. Word had spread quickly through industry contacts about what Jennifer had done, and the response had been overwhelmingly supportive. "Rachel, what your sister-in-law did was unforgivable," said Janet Morrison from the bakery. "I can't imagine how violated you must have felt, waking up from surgery to discover that someone had been planning your funeral and going through your belongings." Several potential clients had contacted me specifically because they had heard about the situation and wanted to work with someone who had handled such a bizarre crisis with professionalism and strength. "We heard about what happened with the false death announcement," said Marcus Chen, the owner of a growing restaurant chain. "The way you've handled this situation shows exactly the kind of crisis management skills we need for our marketing. When can we schedule a meeting?" My business was not only recovering from Jennifer's damage, but actually growing as a result of the attention her actions had generated. People were impressed by how I had responded to such an unusual and hurtful situation, and they wanted to work with someone who demonstrated that kind of resilience and strategic thinking. 3 weeks after my confrontation with Jennifer, David and I received an unexpected visitor. Paul Hayes, Jennifer's husband, showed up at our door on a Saturday afternoon looking uncomfortable and embarrassed. "Rachel, David, I hope you don't mind me stopping by," he said when David let him in. "I wanted to talk to you about what Jennifer did while you were in the hospital." We sat in our living room, and Paul immediately launched into what sounded like a prepared speech. "I want you to know that I had no idea what Jennifer was doing while you were unconscious. I was traveling for work that week, and I didn't get home until Thursday night. When I found out what she had posted on Facebook and what she had done in your house, I was appalled." Paul looked genuinely distressed. "Jennifer and I have been married for 18 years, and I've never seen her behave this way before. I don't know what got into her." "How much did you know about her activities?" I asked. I knew she had posted something on Facebook that turned out to be wrong, but I didn't know about the jewelry or the financial records or the funeral planning until you confronted her. When she told me what you were asking her to do to make it right, I realized how serious this was. Paul paused, clearly struggling with what to say next. "Rachel, I think Jennifer has some issues with jealousy and control that I haven't wanted to acknowledge. She's always been competitive with other women, especially women who are successful or independent." "Is that supposed to be an excuse?" I asked. "No, absolutely not. I'm just trying to understand how she could have done something so hurtful and bizarre. The woman I married wouldn't announce someone's death without checking if it was true. She wouldn't go through someone else's belongings without permission." David leaned forward. "Paul, what are you trying to tell us?" "I'm trying to tell you that I support everything Rachel has asked Jennifer to do to make this right. The apology, the individual contacts, the financial restitution. Jennifer deserves to face consequences for what she did." Paul looked directly at me. "I also want you to know that I've insisted Jennifer get professional help. She's going to start seeing a therapist to figure out why she acted this way and to make sure it never happens again." "That's good to hear," I said. "But it doesn't change what she did or the damage she caused." "I know, and I want you to know that if she fails to follow through on any part of what she's promised you, I'll support whatever legal action you choose to take. What she did was wrong, and she needs to be held accountable." After Paul left, David and I talked about the strange turn our family relationships had taken. "I never thought I'd see the day when Paul would be apologizing to us for Jennifer's behavior," David said. "They've always presented such a united front." "Maybe seeing his wife announce someone's death without verification was a wake-up call for him," I replied. "Maybe he's realizing that Jennifer's issues go deeper than just not liking me." "Do you think she'll actually follow through on everything she promised?" I considered the question. I think she'll follow through because she's afraid of legal consequences, not because she genuinely understands what she did wrong. But honestly, I don't care about her motivations as long as she does what she's supposed to do. And if she doesn't? Then she'll discover that I wasn't bluffing about pursuing legal action. 6 weeks after my surgery, I had a follow-up appointment with Dr. Williams. The appointment went perfectly. My brain scans showed complete healing, my cognitive function was normal, and I was cleared to return to all my regular activities without restrictions. "You've made a remarkable recovery," Dr. Williams told me. "Most patients who suffer this type of aneurysm rupture don't bounce back this quickly or completely." "I had good motivation to recover," I said. "I had some unfinished business to take care of." As I drove home from the doctor's appointment, I reflected on how much my life had changed in 6 weeks. I had nearly died, discovered the true character of someone I had considered family, lost and regained clients, and learned that I was capable of standing up for myself in ways I had never imagined. Most importantly, I had learned that surviving a near-death experience gives you a different perspective on what's worth your time and energy. Life is too short to tolerate people who treat you badly, even if those people are family members. When I got home, there was a message on my answering machine from Rebecca Martinez, the lawyer I had consulted about potential legal action against Jennifer. Rachel, I wanted to let you know that I've had some interesting developments in research for your case. It turns out that Jennifer's behavior while you were unconscious may have violated several state laws beyond just the civil claims we discussed. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss some additional options you might want to consider. I called Rebecca back immediately and scheduled a meeting for the following week. I was curious about what additional legal options might be available, even though Jennifer seemed to be complying with my demands. Rebecca, Jennifer has been following through on the apology and the financial restitution, I explained when we met. Is there still a reason to pursue legal action? That depends on your goals, Rebecca said. If your goal is just to get Jennifer to acknowledge what she did wrong and compensate you for your losses, then it sounds like you're accomplishing that without legal action. But if your goal is to make sure Jennifer faces appropriate consequences for behavior that goes beyond just causing you personal and financial harm, then there might be other considerations. Rebecca pulled out a file. I've been researching the laws around unauthorized access to personal financial information and theft of personal property. What Jennifer did in your house while you were unconscious potentially violates several criminal statutes. Criminal statutes? Burglary, theft, identity theft, unauthorized access to financial records. Depending on exactly what she did and what information she accessed, she could potentially face criminal charges that are completely separate from any civil lawsuit you might file. I thought about this. What would that involve? It would involve filing a complaint with the police and potentially having Jennifer investigated and charged with crimes. The decision about prosecution would ultimately be up to the district attorney's office, but based on what you've told me, there might be enough evidence to pursue criminal charges. The idea of Jennifer facing criminal charges was appealing on one level, but I wasn't sure it was necessary given that she was complying with my demands. Let me think about it, I said. Right now, she's following through on what I asked her to do. If that continues, I might be satisfied with the civil resolution. That's fine. But Rachel, I want you to understand that what Jennifer did while you were unconscious was seriously illegal behavior. Taking someone's jewelry without permission is theft, regardless of her claimed intentions. Going through someone's financial records without authorization is a crime. If she had succeeded in permanently damaging your business, or if she were to violate your privacy again, criminal charges might be the appropriate response. I'll keep that in mind. 2 months after my surgery, I was back to working full-time and had actually expanded my business beyond its pre-surgery level. The publicity from Jennifer's bizarre behavior had generated more interest in my services than any marketing campaign I could have designed. I was also in the final stages of purchasing a new house, a beautiful colonial in a neighborhood across town from where David and I currently lived. We had decided that we wanted a fresh start in a place that didn't have any connection to Jennifer or her dramatic announcement of my death. It'll be nice to have a house that Jennifer has never been inside, David said as we toured the property with our real estate agent. A place where she's never gone through our belongings or planned our funerals. The real estate agent looked confused by this comment, but David and I just smiled. Some family stories are too bizarre to explain to strangers. On a Tuesday afternoon in May, exactly 2 months after my brain surgery, I was working in my home office when the doorbell rang. I looked out the window and saw Jennifer's BMW in my driveway. I opened the front door to find Jennifer standing on my porch holding an envelope and wearing the kind of nervous expression that suggested she had something difficult to say. "Hello, Jennifer," I said. "What can I do for you?" "I brought your final payment," she said, holding out the envelope. "This covers the last of the $30,000. I took the envelope and checked the contents, a cashier's check for $5,000, which completed the financial restitution she had promised. "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate you following through on our agreement." "Rachel, I also wanted to say something else." "What's that?" Jennifer took a deep breath. "I've been seeing a therapist like Paul suggested, and she's helped me understand some things about why I acted the way I did when you were in the hospital. And I realized that I wasn't just trying to help David. I was kind of excited about the drama of it all, about being the person who was handling everything, who was posting updates, who was at the center of what I thought was a tragic situation. This was more self-awareness than I had expected from Jennifer." "Go on." "I think I wanted to be the grieving sister-in-law who stepped up during the crisis. I wanted it to be the hero of the story. And when you didn't actually die, I lost the starring role I had created for myself." Jennifer looked directly at me for the first time since I had opened the door. "That's a terrible thing to admit, but it's the truth. I wasn't hoping you would die, but I was. I was prepared to benefit from your death in ways that had nothing to do with helping David." "Thank you for acknowledging that," I said. "It takes courage to admit that kind of truth about yourself. I also want you to know that I understand why you can't trust me anymore. I violated your privacy, your property, and your family's crisis in ways that were inexcusable. If I were in your position, I wouldn't want me in my life either." Jennifer paused, clearly struggling with her emotions. "I'm not asking for forgiveness or for things to go back to the way they were. I'm just asking you to know that I understand what I did was wrong and that I'm working to make sure I never do anything like it again." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity. What I saw was genuine shame and what appeared to be authentic self-reflection. "Jennifer Hash," she posted, "rest in peace, after my surgery," so I replied from the front door. Description: When I went into emergency surgery for a brain aneurysm, my sister-in-law was the first person my husband called for support. Instead of offering help, she posted on social media that I had passed peacefully and started planning my memorial service. While I was unconscious fighting for my life, she was dividing up my belongings and consoling my grieving husband. 3 days later, when I walked out of that hospital very much alive, I decided it was time to pay her a visit she'd never forget. Sometimes the best way to respond to someone's premature obituary is to deliver the correction in person. Chapter 1: The Aneurysm That Changed Everything. My name is Rachel Morrison, and I died on a Tuesday afternoon in March. At least, that's what my sister-in-law posted on Facebook while I was lying unconscious in the ICU fighting for my life. It started as an ordinary day. I was working from home, managing social media accounts for 3 small businesses, my own little consulting company that I'd built from nothing over the past 5 years. The morning had been productive. I'd launched a campaign for a local bakery that was already getting great engagement, and I was feeling that satisfied buzz that comes from work going well. Then, around 2 p.m., I felt it. A pain in my head unlike anything I'd ever experienced, sudden, severe, like someone had detonated a bomb inside my skull. I tried to stand up from my desk and immediately felt dizzy, nauseous, confused. "David," I called out to my husband, who was working in his home office down the hall. "David, something's wrong." My vision started going fuzzy around the edges. I could hear David's footsteps running toward me, could hear him saying my name with increasing panic, but it sounded like he was talking from underwater. The last thing I remember before everything went black was David's voice on the phone with 911. My wife collapsed. She's unconscious. There's something seriously wrong. What happened next, I learned later from David, and from the medical records I insisted on reviewing once I was coherent enough to understand them. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes and immediately recognized the signs of a possible brain aneurysm. My blood pressure was dangerously high, my pupils were unequal, and I was completely unresponsive. At the hospital, a CT scan confirmed their suspicions. I had suffered a ruptured brain aneurysm, specifically a subarachnoid hemorrhage. Dr. Patricia Williams, the neurosurgeon on call, explained to David that this was a life-threatening emergency requiring immediate surgery. The next few hours are critical, she told him. We need to stop the bleeding and relieve the pressure on her brain. Even with surgery, there's a significant risk of permanent damage or death. David, to his credit, handled the crisis better than I would have expected. He signed the consent forms for emergency surgery, called my parents who lived 3 states away, and then, unfortunately, he called his sister Jennifer. Jennifer Morrison Hayes was 42 years old, 2 years older than me, and had never liked me from the moment David and I started dating 8 years ago. She was one of those people who believed that no one would ever be good enough for her baby brother, and she had spent our entire relationship making that opinion known through subtle digs, exclusions from family events, and a general attitude of barely concealed hostility. Jennifer was married to Paul Hayes, a successful real estate agent, and they lived in a McMansion in the suburbs with their 2 teenagers, Madison and Tyler. She didn't work outside the home, which gave her plenty of time to involve herself in everyone else's business and maintain an active social media presence where she documented every aspect of her blessed life. She was also, as I was about to discover, someone who jumped to conclusions and acted on them with frightening speed. When David called Jennifer from the hospital, he was understandably panicked and emotional. According to what he told me later, the conversation went something like this. Jennifer, something terrible has happened. Rachel collapsed at home and they're rushing her into emergency brain surgery. The doctor said there's a significant risk she might not make it. Oh my God, David, what happened? Brain aneurysm. She just collapsed. I don't know what to do. I'm scared, Jen. I'm coming to the hospital right now. Don't worry, we'll get through this together. What David didn't know was that Jennifer had heard significant risk she might not make it, and somehow translated that into Rachel is definitely going to die. Instead of coming to the hospital to support her brother during a medical crisis, Jennifer apparently decided that I was already gone, and that her job was to help David cope with his imminent widowhood. While I was on the operating table having a neurosurgeon repair the blood vessel in my brain that had nearly killed me, Jennifer was at home making phone calls and, catastrophically, posting on social media. The surgery took 4.5 hours. Dr. Williams later told me it was more complicated than she had initially expected because the aneurysm was located in a particularly difficult area to access, but that the operation had been successful. The bleeding was stopped, the pressure on my brain was relieved, and while they wouldn't know the extent of any permanent damage until I woke up, my vital signs remained stable throughout the procedure. I was moved to the ICU in critical but stable condition. David sat by my bedside for hours, holding my hand and talking to me even though I couldn't respond. The nurses told him that unconscious patients could sometimes hear familiar voices, so he read to me from my favorite books and played music from playlists on my phone. Meanwhile, Jennifer was busy planning my funeral. I learned about this later from my friend Amy Chen, who had tried to call me when she saw Jennifer's Facebook post and couldn't reach anyone. Amy ended up calling David's phone around 11 p.m. that first night. David, I just saw Jennifer's post about Rachel. I'm so sorry for your loss. When did this happen? Why didn't you call me? David was confused. What post? What are you talking about? Rachel is in the ICU. She's alive, Amy. But Jennifer posted that she passed away peacefully after surgery. She said the family is grieving and asking for privacy during this difficult time. David was silent for a long moment. Amy, I need to call you back. He immediately checked Facebook and found Jennifer's post, which had been shared 47 times and had over 200 comments of condolences. The post read, "It is with heavy hearts that we announce the passing of Rachel Morrison, beloved wife, daughter, and friend. Rachel passed peacefully this evening after complications from emergency brain surgery. She fought bravely, but God called her home to be with the angels. Our family is devastated but finds comfort in knowing she is no longer in pain." David is surrounded by family during this incredibly difficult time. Please respect our privacy as we navigate this tragic loss. Funeral arrangements will be announced soon. Hashtag RIP hashtag gone but not forgotten. Hashtag angel. In heaven. David was furious, but he was also exhausted and emotionally drained from spending 12 hours in a hospital waiting room and ICU. Instead of immediately correcting Jennifer's post, he called her. "Jennifer, what the hell is this Facebook post? Rachel isn't dead." "What do you mean she isn't dead? You said the doctor told you she probably wouldn't make it." "I said there was a risk. She made it through surgery fine. She's unconscious, but she's alive and stable." "Oh." There was a pause. "Well, should I delete the post?" "Yes, you should delete the post. And you should post a correction explaining that she's alive." "But David, so many people have already seen it and shared it. Won't it be embarrassing to admit I made a mistake?" David hung up on her. But the damage was done. By the time Jennifer reluctantly posted a brief correction, previous post was premature. Rachel is still in critical condition. Please continue to pray for her recovery. The original death announcement had been screenshot and shared across multiple social media platforms. People who didn't see the correction continued to share the news of my death. And that was just the beginning of what Jennifer had done while I was unconscious. The next morning, my mother arrived at the hospital after driving through the night from Ohio. She was devastated, exhausted, and confused about why she had received so many sympathy calls from friends who had seen social media posts about my death. "David, what is going on?" she asked. "People keep calling to offer condolences. Mrs. Patterson from my book club saw on Facebook that Rachel died. I told her that wasn't true, but she insisted she saw it posted by family." David explained about Jennifer's post and the correction, but my mother's expression grew increasingly angry as she heard the details. She posted that Rachel was dead without checking? She announced funeral arrangements without talking to the family? What is wrong with that woman? That afternoon, while my mother sat with me in the ICU and David went home to shower and change clothes, Jennifer arrived at the hospital. But instead of coming to check on my condition or offer support, she approached my mother with a notebook and a sympathetic expression. "Mrs. Chen," she said, my mother had kept her maiden name, "I know this is a difficult time, but we need to start thinking about arrangements. I've been making some calls, and I think we should have the service at St. Mark's Episcopal, where David and Rachel were married. I've also been in touch with Morrison Funeral Home, and they can accommodate us next weekend." My mother stared at her in disbelief. "Jennifer, Rachel is alive. She's right here. Why are you planning funeral arrangements?" "Well, yes, technically she's alive right now, but the doctor said there could be complications. Brain surgery is very serious. I just thought we should be prepared." "Prepared for what? For my daughter to die so you can have your funeral?" That's not what I meant, Jennifer said quickly. I just want to help David through this difficult time. He's going to need support, and someone needs to handle the practical details. My mother's voice was deadly quiet. The practical details of what, exactly? Well, if the worst happens, someone will need to organize the service, notify people, handle the arrangements. I've already started a phone tree to contact extended family and friends. And I thought maybe we should start thinking about what Rachel would have wanted in terms of music and flowers. What Jennifer didn't tell my mother was that she had already done much more than start making phone calls. Over the past 24 hours, while I was fighting for my life in the ICU, Jennifer had taken it upon herself to begin organizing what she apparently saw as the inevitable aftermath of my death. She had called the church where David and I were married and inquired about availability for a funeral service. She had contacted a funeral home and asked about pricing for various service packages. She had created a group text with David's extended family to coordinate support during this tragic time. She had even driven to our house while David was at the hospital and let herself in with the spare key David had given her years ago for emergencies. Once inside our home, Jennifer had walked through our rooms taking photos of my belongings with her phone. She later claimed this was to preserve memories, but I suspect she was cataloging items she thought should be distributed to family members after my death. She had also rearranged our refrigerator, throwing away food she deemed perishable and organizing the remaining items to help David during his time of grief. She had gone through our mail and sorted it into piles, apparently deciding which items required immediate attention and which could wait until after the funeral. Most disturbing of all, she had gone into our bedroom and selected what she called appropriate funeral attire for me, a navy blue dress I had worn to a cousin's wedding 2 years earlier, along with matching shoes and jewelry. She had laid these items out on our bed and taken a photo, which she texted to David with the message, "I found the perfect outfit for Rachel's service. She looks so beautiful in this dress." David, who was sitting by my bedside in the ICU when he received this text, was so shocked and angry that he had to leave the room to avoid waking other patients with his shouting. But I didn't know about any of this yet. I was still unconscious, still fighting my way back from the edge of death, still unaware that my sister-in-law had not only announced my demise to the world, but had begun dismantling my life in preparation for my funeral. I started regaining consciousness on Thursday afternoon, about 48 hours after the surgery. The first thing I remember is the sound of machines beeping and the feeling of something in my throat, the ventilator that had been helping me breathe. I tried to speak but couldn't, tried to move but felt weak and disoriented. Then I heard David's voice, closer than the machines, warm with relief and exhaustion. "Rachel? Can you hear me? You're in the hospital, but you're going to be okay. You had surgery, but you're going to be okay." Over the next several hours, I gradually became more alert. The ventilator was removed, and I was able to speak in a hoarse whisper. Dr. Williams examined me and pronounced herself cautiously optimistic about my recovery. I was responding appropriately to questions, my motor functions seemed intact, and while I would need time to regain my strength, there appeared to be no major permanent damage from the aneurysm. "You're very lucky," she told me. "This type of hemorrhage can be devastating, but your body responded well to the surgery, and your brain seems to be healing nicely." By Thursday evening, I was alert enough to ask questions about what had happened, how long I'd been unconscious, and who had been notified about my condition. That's when David reluctantly told me about Jennifer's Facebook post. "She posted that I was dead?" I whispered, my voice still weak but my outrage coming through clearly. "She misunderstood what I told her about the surgery risks," David said, looking embarrassed. "She jumped to conclusions and posted before checking with anyone. She did post a correction later." "What kind of correction?" David showed me both posts on his phone. I read them with growing disbelief and anger. The original post was bad enough, dramatic, presumptuous, and completely wrong. But what made it worse was the correction, which was buried in Jennifer's feed with no explanation or apology. Instead of a prominent post acknowledging her mistake and clearly stating that I was alive and recovering, she had posted a brief, vague update that many people probably never saw. "David," I said, my voice getting stronger with my anger. "How many people saw the original post?" "I don't know. Amy saw it, which is how I found out about it. I think it was shared pretty widely before Jennifer took it down." "And how many people saw the correction?" David looked uncomfortable. "Probably not as many." "So there are people out there who think I'm dead?" "Maybe some, but—" "David, call Jennifer. I want to talk to her." "Rachel, you just had brain surgery. You need to rest. We can deal with Jennifer later." "No," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "I want to talk to her now. She announced my death to the world while I was fighting for my life. She doesn't get to wait until later." David reluctantly called Jennifer and handed me the phone. When she answered, her voice was bright and cheerful, as if nothing unusual had happened. "Hi, David. How's Rachel doing today?" "This is Rachel," I said in my hoarse post-surgery voice. "I'm calling to let you know that reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated." There was a long silence. "Rachel? Oh my God, you're awake. How are you feeling?" Like someone who just found out her sister-in-law announced her death on social media without bothering to check if it was actually true. "I made a mistake," Jennifer said quickly. "I misunderstood what David told me about the surgery. I posted a correction as soon as I realized what happened. A correction that 3 people probably saw after an announcement that hundreds of people shared. I'm sorry. I was just trying to help. I thought David needed support, and I wanted people to know what was happening. What was happening was that I was having surgery. What you posted was that I was dead. Those are 2 very different things, Jennifer." "I know, and I'm really sorry. Is there anything I can do to fix this?" I was quiet for a moment, thinking. Actually, yes. There is something you can do. "What?" "Post a clear, prominent announcement that I am alive and recovering well from surgery. Include a photo of me in the hospital if possible. Make sure everyone who saw your original post knows that you were wrong." "Of course. I can do that right away." "And Jennifer? Make sure you mention that I'll be going home soon and looking forward to getting back to normal life. I want it very clear that I'm not just technically alive. I'm fully alive and planning to stay that way." "Absolutely. I'll post something right now." I hung up and handed the phone back to David. We'll see if she actually does it. But even as I was dealing with the immediate problem of Jennifer's premature obituary, I had no idea how much damage she had already done while I was unconscious. I wouldn't learn about her other activities, the funeral planning, the house invasion, the clothing selection, until I got home from the hospital. And that's when I would decide that a simple social media correction wasn't nearly enough to address what my sister-in-law had done to me and my family. Chapter 2: Coming Back from the Dead. I was discharged from the hospital on Saturday morning, 5 days after my surgery. Dr. Williams was pleased with my recovery, but cautioned that I would need several weeks of rest before returning to work or normal activities. "Brain surgery is major trauma," she explained as she reviewed my discharge instructions. "Your body has been through a significant ordeal. Don't try to rush back to your regular routine." David helped me into the car for the ride home, and I felt a strange mixture of gratitude and unease. Gratitude for being alive, for having survived something that could have killed me, for having a husband who had stayed by my side through the crisis. But unease about something I couldn't quite identify. a sense that things weren't quite right, that there were conversations happening around me that I wasn't hearing. "Has Jennifer posted that correction yet?" I asked as we drove through our neighborhood. David was quiet for a moment. "She posted something. Well, you can look at it when we get home." "What does that mean?" "It means she posted something, but it's not exactly what you asked for." When we arrived at our house, David helped me inside and settled me on the couch with pillows and blankets. Then he brought me his laptop so I could check Jennifer's Facebook page. Her correction post, which had received exactly 12 likes and 3 comments, read, "Update on Rachel Morrison. Good news. Rachel is awake and recovering from her surgery. Doctors are optimistic about her progress. Thank you to everyone who shared kind thoughts and prayers during this difficult time. #prayers answered #still in our thoughts." I stared at the post, feeling my blood pressure rise despite the medications I was taking. "David, this doesn't say I'm alive and well. It says I'm recovering and that doctors are optimistic. People reading this could still think I'm dying, just taking longer to do it. I know it's not perfect, but it's not even close to what I asked for. Where's the part about me going home and getting back to normal life? Where's the photo of me looking healthy and alert?" David sat down next to me on the couch. "Rachel, maybe we should just let this go. You're home, you're safe, you're going to be fine. Does it really matter what Jennifer posted on Facebook?" "Yes, it matters. My professional reputation depends on my online presence. I have clients who may have seen her post. I have colleagues who think I'm dead. This isn't just about hurt feelings. This could affect my business." As if to prove my point, my phone started ringing. It was Janet Morrison, one of my biggest clients, calling from her bakery. "Rachel, oh my God, I'm so glad you answered. I saw on social media that you had passed away, but then I got confused because someone else said you were in the hospital. What's going on?" I explained the situation as diplomatically as I could, but I could hear the concern in Janet's voice. "So you're okay? You're going to be able to continue managing our social media accounts?" "Yes, absolutely. I'll need a few weeks to recover, but I'll be back to work soon." "Okay, good. It's just that when I thought you had died, I started looking into other marketing companies. I'm glad I don't have to make a change, but this whole situation has been really confusing." After I hung up, I turned to David. "See? This is affecting my business. Jennifer's dramatic announcement and her inadequate correction are causing real problems. What do you want to do about it?" Before I could answer, I noticed something strange about our living room. The furniture was arranged differently than I remembered. The throw pillows on the couch were in different positions. The books on our coffee table were stacked in a neat pile instead of scattered casually. "David, did you clean the house while I was in the hospital?" "Not really. I was at the hospital most of the time." "Why?" "Things look different, more organized." David looked uncomfortable. "Jennifer came by a couple of times to check on things. She might have tidied up a bit." "She was in our house?" "Just to help out. She brought some food and made sure everything was secure while we were gone." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with my medical condition. She was alone in our house? With our things? "Rachel, she was trying to be helpful. I gave her the spare key years ago for emergencies, and this was definitely an emergency." I got up from the couch, ignoring David's protests that I should rest, and walked through our house examining each room. In the kitchen, I found that our refrigerator had been reorganized and several items had been thrown away. Our mail was sorted into neat piles on the counter. In our bedroom, I discovered the most disturbing evidence of Jennifer's visit. Our bed was perfectly made with the decorative pillows arranged just so. My jewelry box had been opened and some items were missing from their usual spots. but most unsettling of all, there was a navy blue dress hanging on the outside of our closet door, a dress I recognized but hadn't worn in over a year. "David," I called, my voice sharp with alarm. "Why is this dress hanging here?" David appeared in the bedroom doorway looking guilty and exhausted. Jennifer thought. She was trying to be prepared in case. In case what? In case you didn't make it. She wanted to have something appropriate picked out for the funeral. I stared at him in disbelief. She picked out my funeral outfit? While I was still alive? She was trying to help. She thought I would be too upset to handle those kinds of details. "David, do you understand what you're telling me? Your sister came into our home while I was unconscious and selected clothes for my dead body to wear at my funeral. That's not helpful. That's disturbing." I walked to my jewelry box and checked the contents. Several pieces were missing, including my grandmother's pearl necklace and the diamond earrings David had given me for our anniversary. "David, where are my pearls? And my anniversary earrings?" "What pearls?" "My grandmother's pearls. They were in my jewelry box, and now they're gone." David looked confused and worried. Maybe Jennifer moved them somewhere safe? Or maybe Jennifer decided they would look nice on her. "Rachel, you're being paranoid. Jennifer wouldn't steal your jewelry." "Wouldn't she? She announced my death without checking if it was true. She planned my funeral without permission from my family. She came into our house and went through our belongings. At what point do we acknowledge that Jennifer has crossed every reasonable boundary?" I sat down on our bed, suddenly exhausted by the magnitude of what I was discovering. "David, I need you to call Jennifer and ask her about my jewelry. And I need you to ask her exactly what else she did while she was here." "Can't this wait until you're feeling better?" "No, it can't wait. I've been dead for 5 days according to Jennifer's version of events. I need to know what she did with my life while I was supposedly gone." David reluctantly called Jennifer, and I listened to his side of the conversation with growing alarm. "Jennifer, Rachel is asking about some missing jewelry. Her grandmother's pearls and some diamond earrings." "What do you mean you put them somewhere safe?" "Where? Why would you take them to your house?" "No, she doesn't think it's thoughtful. She thinks it's stealing." The conversation continued for several more minutes, with David's voice getting more strained and Jennifer's responses apparently getting more defensive. Finally, David hung up. "She took some of your jewelry to her house because she was worried about security while the house was empty. She said she was planning to give everything back after the funeral. After the funeral that I wasn't going to attend because I would be dead. She's bringing everything back tonight. She said she's sorry for the misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding, David. It's theft. She stole my jewelry and was planning to keep it after I died." "You don't know that." "Don't I? Let me ask you something else. Did Jennifer mention anything about life insurance?" David looked startled. "What? Life insurance? Did she ask about my life insurance policy? About what would happen to our house, our savings, our belongings? She might have mentioned something about making sure I understood what benefits were available. She was trying to help me think through the financial implications." I felt a cold fury rising in my chest. The financial implications of my death? "Rachel, you're making this sound more sinister than it was. Jennifer was trying to help me prepare for the worst-case scenario." "No, David. Jennifer was preparing for what she thought was the inevitable scenario. She wasn't helping you cope with the possibility that I might die. She was helping you plan for what she decided was going to happen." I got up and walked to our home office, where I kept files related to our insurance policies and financial accounts. I wanted to check whether anything had been disturbed, whether Jennifer's helpfulness had extended to reviewing our personal financial information. What I found made me sit down hard in my desk chair. Several file folders had been moved. My life insurance policy was sitting on top of the stack instead of filed alphabetically where it belonged. Our mortgage documents had been pulled and left on the desk. Bank statements were arranged in neat piles by date. "David," I called, my voice carefully controlled. "I need you to come look at this." When David saw the disorganized files, his face went pale. "I didn't give her permission to go through your desk. But you gave her permission to be in our house unsupervised while I was fighting for my life. She said she was just checking on things, making sure everything was secure." "Checking on what, exactly? Our life insurance policy? Our mortgage balance? Our savings account statements?" David slumped into the chair across from my desk. "This is bad, isn't it?" "It's worse than bad, David. Your sister didn't just make a mistake with that Facebook post. She systematically began dismantling my life because she decided I was going to die. She announced my death, planned my funeral, stole my jewelry, went through our financial records, and rearranged our house to her preferences." I opened my laptop and started checking my business accounts, my social media profiles, and my professional emails. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Several potential clients had sent condolence messages and indicated they would be seeking other marketing services. Professional contacts had shared memories of working with me in past tense. Industry groups had posted tributes to my contributions to small business marketing. Jennifer's premature obituary hadn't just been an embarrassing mistake. It had potentially destroyed my professional reputation and damaged my business relationships. "David, I need you to understand something," I said, turning to face my husband. "This isn't about hurt feelings or family drama. What Jennifer did while I was unconscious was a systematic violation of our privacy, our property, and our lives. She needs to face consequences for her actions." "What kind of consequences?" "I don't know yet. But I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. I'm not going to smile and accept her apologies and move on like nothing occurred. Jennifer made decisions about my life and death without my consent or knowledge. Now I'm going to make some decisions about how to respond." That evening, Jennifer arrived at our house carrying a small bag with my missing jewelry. She was dressed casually, but had clearly made an effort with her appearance, fresh makeup, styled hair, and a somber expression that looked practiced. "Rachel," she said as David let her in, "I'm so glad you're home and recovering well. I brought back the jewelry I took for safekeeping." "Hello, Jennifer," I said from my position on the couch. "Thank you for returning my stolen property." "It wasn't stolen," she said quickly. "I was protecting it while the house was empty." "By taking it to your house without permission?" "I was trying to help. I thought David had enough to worry about without concerning himself with home security." Jennifer sat down in the chair across from me and leaned forward with what I'm sure she thought was a caring expression. "Rachel, I want you to know how sorry I am about the confusion with the Facebook post. I misunderstood what David told me about your condition, and I acted too quickly." "You didn't act too quickly, Jennifer. You acted based on wishful thinking." Her expression flickered. "What do you mean?" "I mean that you didn't post about my death because you misunderstood the medical situation. You posted about my death because you wanted me to be dead." "That's a terrible thing to say." "Is it? Because your actions while I was unconscious suggest that you were more interested in planning my funeral than praying for my recovery." David tried to intervene. "Rachel, maybe we should—" "No, David. Jennifer and I need to have this conversation." I looked directly at Jennifer. "While I was fighting for my life in the ICU, you were in my house going through my belongings, selecting my funeral outfit, and reviewing my financial records. That's not the behavior of someone who was hoping for my recovery. I was trying to help David prepare for the worst-case scenario. No, you were preparing for what you hoped would be the final scenario. There's a difference. Jennifer's carefully composed expression was starting to crack. You don't know what you're talking about. You were unconscious. You don't know what David was going through, how scared he was, how much support he needed. You're right, I was unconscious, but I'm awake now, and I can see exactly what you did while I was gone. I pulled out my phone and opened the Facebook app. Jennifer, I want you to post a new correction to your death announcement. A real correction this time. I already posted a correction. No, you posted a vague update that left people wondering if I was still dying. I want you to post a clear, prominent announcement that you made a mistake, that I am alive and well, and that you apologize for the confusion you caused. Fine, I can do that. I'm not finished. I also want you to explain to David and me exactly what you did in our house while we were at the hospital. Every room you entered, everything you touched, every decision you made about our belongings. Jennifer looked at David as if hoping he would rescue her from this conversation. When he remained silent, she turned back to me with a defensive expression. I was trying to help. The house was empty, and I thought David would want someone to check on things. What specifically did you check on? I made sure all the doors and windows were secure. I organized the mail. I cleaned out some expired food from the refrigerator. What else? I wanted to make sure you had something appropriate to wear in case the worst happened. So you went through my closet and selected my funeral outfit? I was trying to spare David from having to make those kinds of decisions while he was grieving. David wasn't grieving, Jennifer. I wasn't dead. But the doctor said there was a risk. You decided to treat that risk as a certainty. I leaned forward, feeling stronger and more determined than I had since waking up in the hospital. Jennifer, what you did wasn't helpful. It was presumptuous, invasive, and cruel. You violated our privacy, stole our property, and announced my death to the world without confirmation. Those actions have consequences. What kind of consequences? That depends. Are you going to post a real correction and apologize publicly for your mistake? Are you going to acknowledge that what you did was wrong? Are you going to promise never to enter our house without permission again? Jennifer looked around the room as if searching for support or an escape route. Of course. I'll post whatever you want me to post. I'll apologize. I never meant for any of this to happen. Good. Then let's start with the Facebook post. Right now, while I can watch you do it. Jennifer reluctantly pulled out her phone and began typing. After several minutes, she showed me the draft. I need to make an important correction to my earlier post about Rachel Morrison. I made a serious error in announcing that Rachel had passed away. This information was completely wrong. Rachel is alive, healthy, and recovering beautifully from her surgery. She is home with her family and looking forward to getting back to her normal life soon. I sincerely apologize for this mistake and for any confusion or distress it may have caused. Rachel is very much alive and well. Hashtag alive and well, hashtag my mistake, hashtag sorry. For the confusion. I read the post twice, then nodded. That's acceptable. Post it. Jennifer hesitated. Are you sure you want me to be so direct about admitting I was wrong? It's going to be embarrassing. Not as embarrassing as being wrong was in the first place. Post it. She tapped the share button, and I watched as the correction appeared on her timeline. There, Jennifer said. Is there anything else you nay?